The defense cascade. The defense cascade on 16 July 2010, in the town hall on the Apple campus in Cupertino, Steve Jobs walked onto a stage to defend the most successful product his company had ever shipped against an accusation that threatened to destroy its launch. The product was the iPhone 4. It had been released 3 weeks earlier. Within days, customers had reported that the phone dropped calls when held in the lower left corner, a region of the body where the external antenna ran along the metal frame. The problem was real, and it was reproducible. The press had covered it daily. The stock had dropped. Consumer Reports, the most respected American product testing magazine, had refused to recommend the phone, a public refusal, almost without precedent in the history of the magazine's relationship with Apple. Narrative was running away from the company. By 16 July, the question was not whether iPhone 4 would dominate the smartphone market. The question was whether the iPhone as a product line could survive the season. Jobs walked to the podium. He had been ill. He looked tired. He was wearing his usual black turtleneck and jeans, but the turtleneck hung looser on him than it had a year before. He stood at the microphone, and he began the press conference with one sentence: "We're not perfect." Then he paused. Then he showed the data. Phones drop calls when held in certain ways. This is true of every smartphone with an external antenna. He had test data from competitor phones showing the same effect. The actual rate of dropped calls on iPhone 4 was 0.55% higher than the iPhone 3GS. Less than one extra drop per 100 calls. That was the technical reality of the problem. The press had been calling it a catastrophe. The data said it was a quarter point. Then he made the offer: free bumper cases for any iPhone 4 customer indefinitely. The bumper case eliminated the antenna issue entirely. The cost to Apple was substantial. The cost to any individual customer with a complaint was zero. Then he opened the floor for questions. They were hostile. He answered them. He conceded what he could concede. The perception problem was real. The communication had been imperfect. The customer's frustration was legitimate. He did not concede what he would not concede. The design was sound. The data showed the problem was not catastrophic. The company had not deceived anyone. He left the stage. The stock recovered. Within 6 months, iPhone 4 was the best-selling smartphone in the world. The press conference is a textbook of the defense cascade. Jobs paused before he started speaking. He named the situation, "We're not perfect," at the highest possible level, conceding the framing. He produced the data that contested the magnitude of the problem. He offered the remedy. He took questions, distinguishing what could be conceded from what could not. He restabilized the audience around the actual substantive position. The phone was a good phone. The problem was small. The company was responsive. Every stage of the cascade was visible. This chapter is the procedure. We will name each stage, study Jobs' execution against the procedure, and then turn to Shankara, whose entire commentarial output is, in effect, a sustained demonstration of what the cascade looks like when it is the structure of a written argument rather than the structure of a press conference. The defense cascade has 6 stages. We will walk them in order. Stage 1, pause. The body's first response to attack is somatic. Heart rate increases, breathing shortens, vision narrows. The voice speeds and rises in pitch. None of these responses aids defense. Each of them, if expressed, signals to the audience that the attack has landed. The defender's first task is to interrupt the somatic cascade before it expresses. We covered the technical details. The relevant tools are box breathing, the physiological sigh, motor reset, and the cognitive priming sentence. They are deployed in the seconds between the attack landing and the response beginning. The pause should be perceptible to the audience. A pause of 2 to 3 seconds at a moment of heightened tension reads as composure. A pause of less than 1 second reads as a flinch. The defender, if they have done their preparation, has trained the longer pause as a default. Jobs' pause after "We're not perfect" was approximately 3 seconds. The audience watched him stand still. He looked at them. They looked at him. The room settled. He continued. Stage 2. Name the move type. In the pause, the defender identifies what kind of attack has been made. The vocabulary we have built in parts I and II is the vocabulary of identification. Is this a definition attack? The opponent is attempting to redefine a term in their favor. Is it a commitment extraction trap? They are asking a question whose answer will damage you regardless of which way you answer. Is it a cage? They have arranged your prior commitments to box you in. Is it a flood? They are throwing many objections at once, hoping you will be unable to respond to all. Is it a personal attack? They have attempted to damage your credibility rather than your argument. Each of these has a different counter. Selecting the wrong counter produces a defense that misses what is being attacked. The naming, performed in the pause, is the act of orienting before responding. In the case of Antennagate, the attack on Jobs was a narrative cage. The press had constructed a story in which iPhone 4 had a fatal design flaw, the company had hidden it, and customers had been betrayed. To respond to any single charge in isolation was to confirm the narrative. To respond to all charges at once was to be flooded. The cage required a different counter from either of these, a reframing of the underlying narrative, supported by data the press had not yet seen. Jobs identified the cage. The first words of the press conference, "We're not perfect," were the reframing. They acknowledged the situation at a level higher than any individual charge, and they put the company in a posture the press had not been expecting, admission rather than denial. The cage required this kind of move at the start. Without it, no defense of any individual point could land. Stage 3. Name the effect. Once the move type is identified, the defender asks what the move is intended to do to the audience. What change in belief, trust, or attention is the opponent seeking? The press's cage was intended to convert iPhone 4 from a desirable product into a product with a stigma. The damage was not in any individual fact about call quality. The damage was in the audience's beliefs about Apple's reliability and the iPhone's status as an aspirational object. Defending the call quality without addressing the status damage would have been technically a successful defense and structurally a failed one. Jobs identified the effect, narrative damage, and selected a counter that addressed it, a posture of openness, an offer of remedy, and data sufficient to defuse the magnitude of the underlying problem. Effect identification is what separates technical correctness from rhetorical effectiveness. The defender who answers the literal question without addressing the underlying effect has won the small argument and lost the large one. Stage 4. Select the counter. The defender now has a move type and an intended effect. From the inventory of moves we have built in parts I and II, plus the moves we will add in chapters 15, 16, and 17, the defender selects the one that addresses both. The selection is made in real time, in the pause, often with the body still settling from the somatic interruption of stage 1. The inventory at this point in your reading consists of definition combat, the steelman, the commitment extraction trap, retorsio, reductio, performative contradiction, analogical reframing, strategic concession, offensive moves from part II, and pause breath posture, costly signaling, frame setting opening, audience tracking, foundational moves from part I. To this we will add, in the remaining chapters of part III, the cage break, the flood interrupt, the counterattack pivot, and the principled refusal. The selection should be the most economical move that addresses the move type and the effect. A counter that uses one move where two would serve is preferable to one that deploys multiple moves. The audience can follow a single move clearly, and complexity in defense reads as complication, which reads as weakness. Jobs's selected counter to the narrative cage was a combination of strategic concession, "We're not perfect," and analogical reframing, "Every smartphone has this issue, here is the data." The combination was tight and economical. He did not deploy retorsio or reductio, he did not need them. The two-move combination was sufficient. Stage 5. execute. The counter is now deployed. The defender performs the move at full quality, not abbreviated, not hedged, not undermined by tone. The execution is the moment the audience watches most closely, and it should look from the outside like the natural response to the situation, not like the careful execution of a learned procedure. Most failures of defense occur at this stage. The defender, having correctly identified the move type and selected the right counter, then executes the counter weakly, apologetically, with self-undermining qualifiers, in a tone that signals the defender does not believe their own counter. The audience, watching the execution, downgrades their assessment of the counter to the level the defender's tone implies. The technical correctness of the move is wasted by the underconfidence of the delivery. The training for Stage 5 is the training for delivery. We will treat this in detail when we discuss drills. For now, the counter should be delivered as if it were the natural and obvious thing to say in the situation. If the counter has been selected correctly, it is the natural and obvious thing. The body's role is to signal that this is so. Stage 6. Restabilize. The counter has landed. The attack has been neutralized. The defender now has a moment in which the audience's attention has shifted from the attack to the defense. This moment is a strategic asset. The defender should use it to return to the governing thought, the substantive position they came to defend. Restabilization is the move that converts a successful defense into forward motion. Without it, the defense is a wash. The audience knows you have survived the attack, but does not know what you came to say. With it, the defense becomes a setup for the substantive case. The audience, having watched you handle the attack, is now ready to hear the case at higher credibility than they would have been before the attack. Jobs's restabilization, after the data and the offer, was a return to the iPhone 4 itself. He spoke about what the product was, what it could do, what the customers were experiencing. The press conference, by its end, had stopped being about the antenna and had become about the phone. The narrative cage had been replaced with the company's preferred narrative. The audience left the room with the company's framing dominant. The cascade, executed as a procedure, looks slow on paper. In practice, the first 3 stages happen in a pause of 2 to 3 seconds. The 4th stage, counter selection, happens in another second or 2. Stages 5 and 6 unfold over the course of the response itself. From attack to restabilization, a competent defender can complete the cascade in 30 seconds. The cascade is trainable. We will treat the training. The most sustained demonstration of the defense cascade in classical literature is Shankara's Brahma Sutra Bhashya, his commentary on the Brahma Sutras, the foundational philosophical text of the Vedanta tradition. The Brahma Sutras themselves are a set of approximately 550 sutras, terse aphoristic statements summarizing the philosophical teachings of the Upanishads. Each sutra is a few words long. The tradition assumes the reader will have a teacher to expand the compressed meaning. Shankara's commentary expands them. His commentary, in modern printed form, runs to roughly 1,000 pages. The structure of the commentary is, throughout, a defense cascade. Each section opens with a sutra. Shankara then states, in his own voice, what the sutra is teaching. Then he raises the purvapaksha, the prior position of an opponent who would dispute the teaching. The purvapaksha is given its full weight. Shankara writes the opponent's position in detail with all the strongest arguments. He does not strawman. The purvapaksha sections of the commentary are, in many cases, the only surviving extended treatments of the schools Shankara was opposing. Later scholars reconstruct lost works of the Mimamsa, the Buddhist schools, and the Sankhya from Shankara's own statements of their cases. Then Shankara executes the cascade. He pauses. The textual signal of the pause is the move from purvapaksha to uttara, the response. He does not begin the response in the same sentence as the objection. He completes the objection, lets it stand, and then in a new section begins. He names the move type. Each purvapaksha is labeled, often explicitly, with the kind of objection it represents. Is it a definitional dispute, a textual dispute, an inferential dispute, an empirical dispute. Shankara names the kind because the response will depend on the kind. A textual dispute is answered with a textual reading, an inferential dispute is answered with an inferential analysis, an empirical dispute is answered with empirical data. He identifies the effect. What would the opponent's position imply if accepted? Where would the doctrine's center go if the objection succeeded? Shankara is precise about the stakes of each objection. Some objections, if accepted, would only modify minor details of the doctrine. Others, if accepted, would collapse the doctrine entirely. The response is calibrated to the stakes. He selects the counter from the inventory of moves available to him, and Shankara's inventory was, by any standard, complete. He selects the one that addresses the move type and the effect. Reductio is selected for objections whose internal logic can be shown to fail. Retorsio is selected for objections that, by their own structure, refute themselves. Definitional combat is selected for objections that depend on a particular reading of a term. The selection is visible in the structure of the response. He executes the counter. The execution is at full quality. Shankara is, in the Brahma Sutra Bhashya, an extraordinarily confident writer. He does not hedge. He does not apologize. He does not undermine his own counter with qualifiers. He states the counter as if it were the natural and obvious response to the objection, and the audience, the reader of the commentary, receives it that way. He restabilizes. After the response to the Purvapaksha, Shankara returns to the sutra. He restates what the sutra is teaching, often in new vocabulary. The doctrine is re-anchored. The objection is processed. The reader has been shown, by demonstration, how the doctrine survives challenge. The commentary, considered as a whole, is approximately 550 performances of the cascade. The reader who works through it is, in effect, watching the most skilled defender in the classical tradition execute the procedure 550 times in succession. By the end, the reader has either internalized the procedure or given up on the commentary. Most readers internalize the procedure. Shankara's Brahma Sutra Bhashya is, in this sense, the textbook of defense in our tradition. We will return to specific instances of his cascade execution in the remaining chapters of Part III.